Hello everybody and welcome back to Expert Examiner IELTS. My name is Glyn and in this video we're going to do some speaking feedback on Mamurbek's speaking test. I hope I pronounced your name correctly, but let's jump right in. Good afternoon, my name is Glyn. Would you please tell me your full name?
My name is Mamurbek Rodov. You can call me Mamurbek.
Okay, thank you, Mamurbek. Now, in this first part of the test, I'm going to ask you some questions about yourself. Where do you live?
I live in a quite small town, which call it.
Which name is, like whose name is, which is called, not which called. So, candidate is trying to use complex sentence, but immediately falling down.
Kandar. It's located in Uzbekistan.
Cool. It's located in, fine.
It's located in the historic part of the Bukhara.
Feels like memorized language. Most people, they prepare well for the question, like, where do you live? Where are you from? You can keep this answer short. You don't need a long answer here.
Which is famous with its...
Yeah, again, which is famous with, should be which is famous for. But again, if I was taking the IELTS test and somebody asked me, where do you live? I would say, oh, I live in a town called Caerphilly. It's in South Wales. And that would be enough. I don't need to add more information.
It is a Moscow name.
So what usually happens with lower level candidates, of course, and Mamurbek communicates okay in English, fine. But what often happens is the candidates really, because they're so worried about the test, they really prepare for the predictable parts, right? So when they get the questions like, what is your name? Where do you live? Do you work or study? That's the part that they try to develop the most because they expect those questions and they can prepare for those questions. But then when other questions come up, they tend to be less developed. But let's see if that's what happens here. And what do you like? What do you like most about living in this place?
My hometown is very very fresh air, and
my hometown is very fresh air. My hometown has very fresh air. Fine.
And
so noticeable difficulty, right? I mentioned this thing a lot because it's the easiest thing to spot with fluency and coherence. How comfortable does the candidate deal with the questions? And usually you can see it on facial expressions, things like this. They close their eyes. They're really searching hard for the right words. For me, it's immediately clear that the candidate has difficulty responding to a fairly basic question. And maybe this is because the candidate is trying to think of difficult language. What do you like most about your city? Oh, I really like the air. It's very fresh. We don't have a lot of traffic. There are not a lot of cars on the road. So it's very nice when you take a walk. That's absolutely fine. We don't need anything more complicated than that, really.
Quite far from the light pollution. Yeah, so
candidates trying to talk about like light pollution. I think, well, do we need to go that deep into it? If you're aiming for like 6.5 or something like this, don't overcomplicate your ideas. What do you like about the city? Maybe you like the architecture, maybe you like the food, maybe you like the people, maybe you like the weather, maybe there's a park that you like.
You can see the stars very clear in my hometown.
Okay, so we do get an answer. No light pollution. You can see the stars. That's logical. That makes sense. Takes a while for the candidate to find the language, and the chunking. The words aren't grouped together appropriately, which will cost him both with fluency and with pronunciation.
It's really, I love it. It's really lovely.
Cool. So it's really, I love it. It's really lovely. Again, candidate relies a lot on reformulation to extend answers. Reformulation is when you start saying something, then you go back and then you try again. And then you go back and you change some parts. And do you think you will continue living in this place in the future?
Yes, of course, but mm, in my some years, I want to
Yeah, in my some years. So it sounds like he's trying to use a time adverbial, like in the next few years, but in my some years, yeah, it doesn't work.
to I want to go study abroad and
Okay, I want to study abroad, not I want to go study abroad, but okay, clear.
live some my years in abroad about
Play some my years in abroad. So I don't know about this meaning of play, maybe spend some time abroad. So we don't pick, these are quite basic words, the difference between play and spend.
10 years. I want to live in abroad, but after after studying, came to my
After I studying, I came. So came is a past tense verb, but we're talking about the future. So candidate has that difficulty.
living hometown and I stay there.
Again, I'm stay there. So I think what the candidate is trying to say is he'd like to spend some time abroad, maybe 10 years, and then come back to his home and then stay there. I think that's what he's trying to say, but he doesn't quite have the linguistic tools to express that clearly. Let's talk about traveling now. Do you like traveling?
Uh, Traveling, yes, of course. I love traveling, but I haven't been in a abroad. Uh,
I haven't been in abroad. Okay, candidate is attempting to use present perfect, which is nice. I haven't been abroad, not I haven't been in abroad.
uh, Before I'm preparing my university
So when we try to get some complexity in the sentence now, I haven't been in abroad before I am trying or I'm studying, preparing in university. Not quite sure.
and I I want to travel many sightseeings.
I want to travel many sightseeings. Yeah, again, that doesn't, I want to go sightseeing. I want to travel to see many different sites. Candidate has basic words, tries to put them together, but can't quite put them together. And already noticeable in part one, we don't get back to back error free sentences. Grammar, I can already say, is going to be down at that, I would say probably band 4 or 5 for grammar already.
I want to go many sightseeings, which
It's okay. I want to go. That's some good infinitive. I want to go. Still, I would expect, B1s should have good control of that. Want to do. A2s can produce it sometimes.
which is famous in Uzbekistan is Ark in Bukhara. It's located in Bukhara, and traveling also in with traveling you can learn and you can learn many things from culture to the dishes.
Okay, this feels like a part three answer, right? It's like, what are the benefits of traveling? And that's, you can learn many things if you go traveling. Part one is personal. We don't need general ideas about people. Do you like traveling? Normal answer is yes, I do. Unfortunately, I've never been to another country, but I would like to visit a lot of different places. For example, I would really like to go to because I want to see. Fine, that's fine as an answer.
Also
Hmm.
you can
And and also another thing, and I've mentioned this before with kind of B or A candidates, shall we say, like A2, B1. It's never easy to understand when their turn has finished, and you always get this like uncomfortableness or this discomfort or awkwardness where you think the candidate has finished and then you go to the next question and then the candidate says and also I, and that happens of course because the candidate takes time between their ideas. It's like the question is what do you like drinking, and people say I like tea, And also, I like coffee, but I don't drink it at night because it's difficult to sleep. And in each one of those gaps, you could think, okay, that's the end of the turn. Um, yeah, that is very noticeable with the B1-ish candidates. Thank you. When did you last take a trip somewhere?
Mm,
So this is just checking past simple. Does the candidate, can the candidate control past simple? I would expect most B1 candidates to be able to control for past simple, not just using it correctly once, but using it a few times.
about it's been about 6 months ago.
So it's been about 6 months ago. Should be. It was about 6 months ago.
My in my university in my university times. When I'm studying in
So notice when I am studying, it should be when I was studying.
university in these times. I'm going to the Registan,
I'm going to should be I went to.
which is famous with its three
Again, we get this, which is famous with.
buildings, which is great. It's famous. It's famous with its famous.
So it looks like the candidate has just learned, a few bits of language with which, like which is famous with, it should be to be famous for, which is famous for. But we get it quite a lot. We've had it, I think, in three different questions now. Be famous with.
Famous scale. It's famous scale.
So again, it's not quite clear what the candidate is trying to say. So this is a breakdown in coherence. Yeah, and again, not one correct past tense used correctly there. Let's move on and talk about food now. What's your favorite type of food?
Favorite type of food. My favorite type of food is I prefer eating healthier food.
Cool. So got they prefer eating. Gerund, I will say, want to do, prefer eating. Candidate is not bad with gerunds and infinitives.
And most of times, sometimes eat my our traditional dishes.
And notice their lack of sentences, right? So this is just a connection of words and phrases. And sometimes eat dishes. There's no subject there. There's no real grammar linking it together. It's not, and I sometimes eat and sometimes eat. And maybe that's, in some languages, verbs conjugate. It's difficult to explain this grammatical concept. In some languages, verbs conjugate. You change the verb to show who is doing it, right? So in Russian, if you have the verb like играть, you say я играю, ты играешь, он играет. Like I play, you play, he plays. And so sometimes in some languages you can take out those subjects, right? You can say я люблю футбол, я люблю футбол, играю каждый день. I love football, play every day. But that verb play has changed into like I play. Now in English we don't have these conjugations. And so we need that subject. You can't just say and sometimes play. That makes it sound like we're not using sentence structures. And that is, the defining feature between A1 grammar and A2 grammar is the attempt at using sentences. A1s tend not to speak in sentences, right? They just speak in individual words, individual phrases. When did you last go on holiday? Last weekend. Holiday, holiday. Last weekend. Holiday. Go. Me. Go. Go. Holiday. Friend. Me. Go. Go. Holiday. Just speak in individual words and sentences, individual words and phrases. This candidate does generally try to use sentences, so for sure, he's not A1 grammar, but I think probably he's closer to A2. Attempts at making sentences, very limited success. Some sentences, some short sentences are error free, but there are pretty much mistakes in every sentence.
Osh, my favorite food is osh sometimes, but sometimes different. and many times also, and sometimes I love eating fish.
Well, you see, sometimes I love eating fish. That's a really nice, accurate sentence. And sometimes we do get those accurate sentences. They're very rare, but sometimes they are there. Good. And do you
Also.
prefer eating out? And again, you see the candidate tries to add more. Yeah, it's always tricky between the examiner and the candidate, but advice for candidates: when the examiner starts asking a question, don't try to interrupt or talk over. I think candidates generally don't do that, but sometimes candidates really try to finish their ideas. Let the examiner control the time, let the examiner control whose turn it is to speak. Restaurant or a cafe, or eating at home?
It depends. If I want to
That's nice. It depends, and then an if clause, very natural.
spend time with my friends, I prefer it.
Okay, we get that I am prefer. So this use of verb to be. English is tough. Present simple is tough. You know, when do we use I? When do we use I'm? Do we say I happy or I'm happy? Do we say I prefer or I'm prefer? And this candidate doesn't demonstrate really that he fully understands that, because we get these sentences like I am prefer.
In the outside, but if I'm alone, I prefer eating
Again, we get that I am prefer.
in home.
Okay, thank you. All right, so thoughts on part one. Candidate is definitely making attempts at answering questions fairly directly. At times, some of the ideas feel, like they're a little bit tough. Like when you talk about, like, do you like traveling? You don't need to go into the benefits that traveling gives people in general. Stick with a nice short answer. Yes, I like traveling. Unfortunately, I've never been to another country, but I would like to visit Italy in the future. That's fine. That's fine. Grammar, as I've already mentioned a lot about grammar, I think he is at that high A2 level, or maybe just A2 level. Vocab is okay. We get, things like it depends. That's quite nice. Candidate, uses want, prefer eating. Cool. Vocab seems to be all right. Words like light pollution come up. That's pretty good. There are, flashes, perhaps flashes of B2 in the candidate's vocab, but seems to be at, decent B1 level with vocab, I would say. Pronunciation suffers from a lack of fluency. There's no real intonation. There's no real stress timing. Candidate relays words pretty mechanically, like he is trying to think about the next word, so we don't get any like connection of things like this, and that's, pronunciation is often linked to fluency. Disfluent people tend to have more mechanical pronunciation. In terms of coherence, some of the answers are really difficult to follow, and I'm not quite sure what they mean, so that's a problem. There were some attempts at like subordination, I think, some attempts at some like linkers and connectives. But yeah, because that coherence is low. Yeah, it's going to be tough to get a good mark for that. But let's get into part two. We'll see what the candidate needs to do here. Candidate needs to describe a good teacher that he's had. So a mix of present and past here, describing, what the teacher is like in the present in general, but what the teacher taught you in the past, why this teacher had a positive effect on you in the past. So I would expect, a little bit of past time, a little bit of present time here. Nice ability to activate vocab connected to personality, strict, kind, generous, thoughtful, all of that type of stuff. Let's see how the candidate does. Preparation time. Sorry about that.
His name is.
Sorry about that. Can you start speaking now, please?
My favorite feature. My favorite feature is his name is Mamurbek. I have met with them about 5 years ago in
Okay, it should be I met him 5 years ago, not I have met him. So I notice this is something I've noticed now that the candidate hasn't made one attempt at past simple. Everything has been present perfect. So I don't know in the candidate's learning of English if he just skipped past simple, like I met, I went, I did, I saw, and just uses present perfect. I have met, I have seen, I have been, I have gone, I have done, blah blah blah. If if you are struggling with grammar and you can't choose between present perfect and past simple, the safer bet is usually past simple.
my university. In my university, he taught me uh, in lessons. He taught me innovation in
So lots of repetition. He taught me in university innovation. Candidate has to repeat many words back to back. Again, that shows a lack of fluency.
in innovation lesson. I have learned. I have heard learned about within them. I have I have learned
Again, from the body language, right? You don't need to be an expert examiner to understand that the candidate has some difficulty with this task, and we expect that, right? In speaking part one, it's A2s will struggle, B1s will be okay, and I think that candidate is between A2 and B1 maybe, and in part two, B1s will really struggle to speak for 2 minutes, and B2s will find it more or less okay.
many things from them. For example, confidence, cheerfulness, and
Yeah, I mean, what he taught you, I'm thinking here as a teacher, what did he teach you? If he taught you innovation, cool. Tell me something about those classes. What did you learn in those classes? Can you remember a specific thing that he taught you? It seems strange that a teacher, a university teacher or lecturer or professor who's teaching innovation would teach you about confidence and cheerfulness. I mean, sometimes it happens, soft skills, but I don't know.
some sometimes he is very strict in his time. He's really
Strict is a great word to describe a teacher, but can you link that then to why, it's a good teacher? So why is his strictness a good thing?
he's really strict with his time. I have learned this from him, and also he go to the mosques and
He goes usually, he went in the past, and also this word's pronounced as mosques. I know we write it like mosques, but mosques. Now I'm thinking here, maybe I end it, maybe I ask a follow-up question, a prompt to get him to keep going, but I thought I'll just give him a bit of time, maybe he'll keep going.
I have he is my main teacher in my graduation project.
Again, it's difficult to know if he's talking about the present or the past because the grammar suggests he is my main teacher, but earlier he said in his university time as if it was the past. So
He was my main feature
he is was, yeah,
project. He was my main
he is was, yeah, he is was. That's systematic. That's real. Yeah, it's a real problem.
feature, a main teacher in my graduation project, and also taught me and innovations. We have gone to the innovation competitions.
Again, we have gone using this present perfect. Strange that the candidate can use the form of present perfect relatively correctly. Doesn't use it really in the right context. Should use past simple here. But it is interesting that the candidate has seemingly has more familiarity with past simple than present perfect. Sorry, with present perfect The candidate seems to know the form of present perfect better than the form of past simple. That's strange.
with and
Okay, thank you. So yeah, I can't really say that there's a meaningful answer there. I didn't really get a real sense of why this teacher was important or why this teacher had a positive effect on the candidate. I understand that it's a teacher at university who taught innovation and helped him to maybe be more confident and be more cheerful, but that's about it. So very limited. Candidate is trying to be on topic, isn't drifting off topic, but the candidate does have very noticeable difficulties, dealing with the question directly. All right, so you've been talking about it. So part three is going to be tough. We know part three is going to be tough if you are an A2, B1 candidate. Part three will be tough. Teacher that you've had. Let's talk about teachers in more detail now. Firstly, what makes a good teacher, in your opinion?
I think the main thing is it's his
I like this. The main thing is very nice.
uh, uh,
I don't know why teacher can be he or she.
understanding the world, understanding his opinions.
Difficult. I mean, I could probably repeat it or write down the answer and make sense of it, but it's difficult to understand immediately what the candidate means.
His opinions, um, his understanding for the world.
He is understanding for the world. Maybe he understands the world, but we need to be more specific. Why is it important for teachers to understand the world? If you're teaching mathematics, you might not need to know to understand the world, right? In general, what makes a teacher a good teacher?
How he is understand the world and his habits also very important.
Cool. His habits are very important, so we miss that verb to be. And again, what examples of habits and why are the habits important?
And sometimes it's his religion also it's also important role
Cool. Why is religion in a teacher important? We want to develop that.
in a good teacher.
Mhm. So we get answers like, okay, must understand the world, um, must have good habits, and must be religious. But there's no development to say why that is important in a teacher. And how has the role of teachers changed in recent years?
Uh, teachers roles about 2 or 3 years ago in our country all teachers studied offline his study offline.
So teachers study offline. Maybe we're mixing up teachers, like the word teach and study. Teachers don't study. Teachers teach, students study.
But at the time nowadays about half of the teachers best teachers in English teachers studied his courses mostly offline because
Again, I can't make sense of that. In the past, teachers studied offline, but nowadays, teachers study offline.
I think it's more profitable and also he can
Again, profitable. Candidate definitely has flashes of B2 vocab, flashes of B2 vocab. Not sustained, but some light pollution, profitable, trying to activate them in a natural way too.
and it's also it's cheap for students
Activating that comparative form, cheaper, not bad.
than offline.
But I guess he means like in the past they were offline, but now they are online. And I guess he just misspoke. And do you think technology can replace teachers in the future?
Mm, no, I think it's not, but
I think it's not. Can they? No, I don't think they can. Not, it is not.
because and because I think who can
Yeah, very noticeable difficulties with fluency, isn't there?
who can use
Aren't there?
technology. He
Yeah, technology instead of technology. Not a big problem. I understand what he means.
can be the best in this file, but who can't who rely on or who's rely the traditional education, he can't be in this field.
And again, I can infer meaning here. It's not immediately understandable, but the candidate is saying, trying to say that in the future, technology will not replace teachers, but the only teachers who will be successful in the future are the teachers who will be able to make good use of technology. Right, so he's saying that teachers in the future will need to use technology well, but that technology won't replace teachers, which is a fair point. But the candidate again just doesn't have the linguistic resources to explain that point clearly. And that's no judgment on the candidate, right? We're all, many people study different languages, and if you study a second language, there's always a time when you're at A1, at A2, at B1, and sometimes people get to B2. Now let's get into higher education. Do you think all young people should try to get into university? Keyword is should here. Should they try to get into university?
No, I think no, because in Uzbekistan, my opinion, in Uzbekistan, mostly educations are not very well.
So, should kids try to get into university? No, because educations are not very well. Maybe he's saying like no, because education is not good. That maybe makes sense.
If bad students learned many things after graduation within work, in practice they learn maybe.
I agree with that point too. I think the things that we learn, but it's strangely saying after graduation, because it's are we talking about graduating from university or finishing high school? Maybe he's talking about high school, but I agree with the point that not everyone should try to get into university. You know, in many cases, a university degree is only important because people say a university degree is important in many cases. I've known many teachers who are very, very good at their job who don't have university degrees. I've known many teachers who have university degrees who aren't that good. Yeah, skills. I'm for skills.
People should do who want people should do things that he wants.
Cool. People should do whatever they want. People should do things that they want, maybe. Cool. That idea is clear. Some people believe that all university education should be free. What do you think?
No, I think it's not, because
I think it's not, but the question is, should it be for free?
if education free, it's
Again, missing that verb be, if education is free, not if education will free.
teachers
Or even if education was free, hypothetical.
teachers salary maybe it depends on it's connect with the teacher's salary and
It is connect. It is connect.
government economy. It can be harmful for this.
Okay, so again, we kind of get an idea that, maybe I can fill in the gaps and say, oh, the candidate is trying to say that if education is free, then it's controlled by the government, and maybe the standards won't be so high and they won't be able to pay salaries as high as, the private sector can pay. But again, I'm using my own, what I call background schemata for this, right? I'm using my knowledge of the world to try to guess what the candidate is saying, because the candidate, again, doesn't have enough language to put that point forward. But I will say he's making good attempts in part three. He understands the questions clearly, and he is, trying to express points of view here.
I
And
think it's
finally, how effective do you think distance learning is for higher education?
distance learning have many benefits in, I think. For example, you can learn anything from your hometown, and
That's nice. You can learn anything from your hometown. Cool. We get you, and then we get a nice modal verb group, can learn, and then we get object anything, and then prepositional phrase from your hometown. That's accurate. Accurate sentence structure. Cool.
spend less time for walking and it's also cheaper than offline, uh, but there are some there are some different aspects. For example, you cannot learn with group, and you if you want to, if you group learner, if you are a group learner, you it's cannot be suit you. It can't suit.
It's can't suit. It is can't. Yeah, it's grammar. Yeah, we have serious problems with grammar. Even though we do have some nice flashes of accurate grammar, it might not suit you.
Yeah.
Maybe. Okay. Thank you. That is the end of the test. All right, so let's get into some marks for this candidate. I will say, the candidate really made a good effort in part three. And I was thinking, for marks with fluency and coherence, I was thinking it's probably a 4. But I think after that part three, I'm going to put it up to a 5, because I think the candidate really struggled to engage. I think with part two, but I think in part three he did manage to get some ideas out there. So let's give some feedback here. So fluency and coherence for me is going to be a. Is that visible? Should I make it bigger? What about like that? Yeah, that's kind of visible. So band 5 for me, fluency and coherence. So you often have to repeat the same word over and over, and you sometimes get lost in the middle of a sentence. Breakdowns noticeably affect your speech in a negative way. Sorry if this language is tough to understand. You made a good attempt in part three, though. And I think that saved you. I was originally thinking probably 4 for fluency and coherence, but now I'm thinking, yeah, maybe enough for a 5. Lexical resource, I think I can comfortably award the 5 here. So again, at times it was clear that you had difficulty accessing the vocab that you needed, but you also showed some really nice moments with vocab like light pollution. Who else, Glenn? Light pollution and profitable and things like this. There were some moments in there where I thought, yeah, that vocab is all right. At some points, it just felt like I could kind of see what you wanted to say, but you didn't quite have enough vocab to really get there. I think intermediate is probably where your vocab is. Yeah. So moving on to the next two. Now, grammar is where your score is going to be negatively affected. For me, that is a 4. So almost all sentences have a mistake. Mistakes with the most basic structures are fairly common. Some error-free sentences exist, but they are so rare. So, in short, almost even with simple stuff, present simple, past simple, how we use the verb to be, how we use modals, all of that stuff you have mistakes with. You are good. Let's put some positives. You are good, though, with some gerunds and infinitives. Like want to do, prefer doing. Those are common mistakes that people at A2 make, but you don't make them. That's good. But overall, for this, and pronunciation, I think 5. Most of what you say is pretty clear, but you don't really show any intonation, chunking, connected speech. Intonation is like when our language goes up and then it goes down. So, that flow of the speech, you don't have it because, you lack fluency. You're at that B1-ish level, and it's difficult for you to produce that language. You have to think a little bit more before you speak, and so you speak more like this, and so that's why the pronunciation drops to A5. Overall, that gives you a score of 4.5, and I think an intermediate student, an intermediate English user with pre-intermediate grammar, and I think that's fair. I think that's fair. IELTS is, I think, quite generous. If this was, if I was taking students and I was doing a speaking test, I would probably place the candidate at A2 rather than B1. But on the IELTS scale, there's probably enough for a B1 there. Areas of improvement. So I don't think I need to put... I don't need to put much here at the moment. Damn it. Your English speaking is at a fairly low level. I would recommend forgetting about IELTS in the near future and focusing on general English. It's quite clear that you don't have much practice speaking English, and so I would recommend trying to find a speaking partner. Now, maybe, I don't know, maybe your comprehension of English is good. I have no idea. Maybe you do okay in the reading and the listening. I don't know. But it is pretty clear to me that your speaking level is weak. You don't feel comfortable speaking. You definitely need some practice, and maybe finding a speaking partner just to get the feel of, using English 2 or 3 times a week. Try to find a speaking partner who is not from Uzbekistan. Try to find a speaking partner who doesn't speak your first language, so that you have to use English just to communicate ideas and to talk about yourself and things like this, to build some comfort. I think you really should, if you're planning to take IELTS in the next 3 months, I think you really have to hire a teacher. I know not everybody has the money to do that, but my recommendation would be to hire a teacher. I think you need some professional guidance to help you work on some of your problems, because grammar is a huge issue for you, and it's a difficult thing to improve by yourself. Yeah. So anyway, for me, overall score of 4.5 for this. So, in the middle of intermediate, but with slightly lower grammar. Yeah, a nice candidate's a nice guy and fair play. I always have so much respect for, it's kind of easy if you're a C1, a C2 candidate. It's easy to come onto Zoom to speak to a stranger and to show off all of your amazing English. I mean, I still have a lot of respect for you guys as language learners too, you C1s and C2s. But for me, for someone like Mamurbek to come on to this channel, to be brave and to say, you know what? Yeah, lots of people are going to watch me. I'm not like incredibly comfortable with my English, but I'm gonna give it a go. I'm gonna try. I'm gonna do my best, and we'll see what happens. So, full respect to the candidate. I think in part three, you really did a great job of trying to answer those questions. So, thank you so much for being a candidate here. If you would like to be a candidate, dear viewer, if you would like to be a candidate on this channel and have your own free practice speaking test with feedback, or if you would like me to check your IELTS writing, then you can request this on my Telegram channel. My Telegram channel is Expert Examiner, and a link to this channel is given in the description. More videos coming soon, but for now, bye bye.